morning. This is Jay Rovert, founder and director of the R&B Group, one of the more prominent and successful networking groups in the Northeast. And this morning, part of our interview series of our wonderful guests, I have the privilege of reintroducing John Yaworsky, who we spent about 15 minutes going from 0 to 20. And because it was so important, his formative years and the things that he did in making him the person who developed this wonderful career today. So good morning. And John, how are you doing this morning?
Great, Jay. Thanks for having me again. Look forward to talking to you.
Fantastic. I thought we should really just start and go into your professional life and really discuss some of the work you've done with the Fortune 100 or 500, because I think that in many ways separates you from many of the people who are online talking about doing work and all that. I think that takes your career to a little different level with the level of experience you have, whether it's doing something local like this or doing something global. So please begin talking about the beginnings of how you entered the Fortune 500 and started doing some of the work and doing some of the projects.
Sure. So I have a fine arts background, as I've said, and I immediately got hired after school to work on projects, a wide range of projects. I came back to Chicago, and in Chicago, corporate work is a big part of it. Commercial work is a big part of the sort of work that's done around here. Not as much TV shows and not as many feature films, at least when I was starting. Yeah. Corporate work was the lion's share of the work that I was doing. I was learning, honing my skills and meeting a lot of people at various levels, working on projects for Abbott, Boeing, CDW, Allstate, Kraft, Kemper Insurance. Those were the sort of main, McDonald's. Those were the sort of clients that were just doing tons of work. Yeah. So I was able to work on projects. At the beginning, I was working as various positions. Some places I was producing, some I was directing, some thought of me as a camera person. And I wouldn't have it any other way because I could learn skill set. I was establishing skill sets that I could use, bring from one project and bring to another. Sure. Learn something on a high budget project and then bring it to something at Rotary International, for example, that might have a smaller budget, but it's just as important and significant. So, sure. High-end corporate commercials, internal, external communications. I think a lot of employee benefit communications was a big part of the sort of work that I did and continue to do, because I think organizations value and understand the importance of a good communications piece, both for internal audiences and external audiences.
And you also have an interesting resume in academia. I know you've done a lot of work for major schools like Georgetown and Johns Hopkins. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So it was interesting. Several years ago, I was brought on to raise the production value for some of the North Star accounts for John Wiley, a publisher, and they're an online course creator. And it was a short contract that ended up going fairly long. I learned it was an industry that I hadn't really worked in very much, but communications and storytelling and production is production. If there's one thing I've learned is how to take knowledge gained in one genre and bring it to another genre. So for the last 4 years, I was doing work for Georgetown, creating courses, providing the media strategy and content production for courses for Georgetown. And then it migrated over to Johns Hopkins. And I continue to do work for a neighbor of mine right down the street here in Northwestern University. I haven't started doing courses for them, but I've done a lot of communications pieces and marketing pieces for them. So I find storytelling is storytelling. Good strategic communications, whether it be in online education or marketing or whatever, it's still compelling, high quality media is what I always strive to do. keep the duration short so it's digestible and compelling and interesting. And it just was a natural fit and timing wise with online education.
I think both developing courses though for college kids versus dealing with somebody in their 50s and 60s is a little different. I think there's more of a suspicion factor, especially in our time, with Vietnam and everything. There must have been a little different way you had to handle that than for the Boeing audience.
Well, I think that's true. I think probably the single thing that was different was that after doing a little in Discovery, I learned that all the courses I was doing were graduate level courses. And I realized that all the students, for the most part, were working full time. So they were watching on their devices, on cell phones, on iPads, and that sort of thing. So the biggest thing was to make sure that it's short, digestible pieces so they could, if they're doing if it's a course on econometrics, for example, not have it be a 40-minute lecture on econometrics, but have it be in short, digestible pieces that were compelling and easy to understand. And then the other thing that I tried to do was I would find out what the professor said, what the students were having the most problem with, and then put a disproportionate amount of the energy into the areas that are most difficult.
Sure.
There could be self-guided areas in some of the basics, but to create even amount of energy into the entire course. So duration and focusing on the problem areas the most is what ended up making them extremely successful.
John, in your wildest dreams, did you think online courses would take over the universe like they have now with COVID? Was that something you even thought about?
No, it really wasn't. As a matter of fact, I mean, I understood like Udemy and Khan Academy and certain aspects of it. And I was working on it before COVID hit, but I think a lot of organizations were caught a little flat-footed. So a lot of organizations were forced to teach courses just through Zoom. They weren't creating compelling content, which is problematic from a learning standpoint and a Zoom fatigue standpoint and various aspects. So I think, no, to answer your question, no, I really didn't have any idea that was going to be as huge online education. But I think the world is kind of coming around and realizing the benefit of it. And I think really the model moving forward is a hybrid. I think the collegial meeting is huge. I think working with classes and having office hours and all that is very important. But at the same time, I think so much can be done self-guided, self-paced, asynchronous or synchronous courses. I think, you touched on the generation aspect of it, multi-generation or younger generation. I have sons that just realize if they have a question on something, they just go on YouTube and they know that they can learn how to code something or take apart something or fix something. It's just built in their DNA now that the information is out there. So I feel like my job is to help facilitate that with professors, and obviously at a very high level in some of these, the adjuncts I worked with at Georgetown Hopkins were the leaders in their field, clearly. And I'd like to think I got smarter and I audited all these courses. I'm not exactly sure that I had the attention span to be able to take it all in, but at least a superficial knowledge of a lot of topics.
Sure. John, when I was going over the notes and I saw something, it took about 3 double takes, maybe 6 takes. When I saw a note about the Dalai Lama, and I just found that I just never saw anybody talk about the Dalai Lama. I don't think I've ever met anybody who even got close to the person outside of a video on TV or something. And that sort of merges your childhood by being involved in nature and the hiking and the meditation involved and all the spiritual stuff about climbing mountains, and then meeting the Dalai Lama in later life. Please give us a little knowledge here.
Sure. Well, one of the most interesting thing about that was my dad was a polylinguist and I studied German when I was a kid, and I had an extremely difficult time. German is a difficult language to learn. I learned, I took 4 years of German, but I probably learned a year's worth. Who knows how much, but yes. I ended up being hired by German television, again, out of the blue,
Yes.
to be the producer to interview the Dalai Lama. So it was during the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago, which is an amazing thing in itself. And spiritual leaders, religious leaders from around the world were here. And I was assigned to interview the Dalai Lama. And it's like, what do you ask the Dalai Lama? It's like, I was asking him questions like, how do you like Chicago? Why is this important? Are you going to go see a Cubs game? Some silly things, but
Things he
very,
might like, things he might like and surprise
oh,
you.
he did. And he was so gracious. And it's probably the only time I've ever been a little starstruck, to be honest, but I hung in there and I was fine. I don't think I showed it too much, but the whole time, the funniest thing was the whole time the German, the people from German television, ZDF, kept asking me, how's it going? How's it going? VG, how's it going in German? And I'm like, hey, I'm busy here. I'm talking to the Dalai Lama here. I was like, cool it. So I really felt like my something really kind of pushed towards having that experience. And it was, needless to say, 20 minutes interviewing the Dalai Lama was quite a highlight.
Fascinating. And, I think with the onset of COVID, it is also knowing what we're doing online. We're living the life of the Jetsons now. I think there has been more people thinking about, God, we've taken a couple steps out of the way now. We're actually going into 5th and 6th and 7th. Tell us, talk to the audience a little bit about holographic telepresence, because I read about 4 articles. I think I absorbed 10%, but it's still the little that I absorbed was fascinating. So please talk to us and how this is going to apply to my future and what we're going to be seeing in video going forward.
Right. Well, so I'm a little bit of a technocrat. I do like being involved with technology. I always have been. And I had a client ask me if I could do holograms, that they wanted to do a New York Times bestseller in Chicago for a client in China. And of course, I said, of course I can do holograms, and no problem. And then, of course, I got off the phone and quickly researched, how in the world do you do a hologram? There's something called Pepper's Ghost, which is worth taking a look at. That goes from, that's a style with, it's basically smoke and mirrors. It literally is smoke and mirrors. When someone has that expression, how was it done? It was done with smoke and mirrors. But it originated in the mid 1800s. But holographic telepresence now is a little more involved. It's a technology. It's usually proprietary. A few different companies do it. I have a partner here that's actually based out of Toronto that I work with that can do holographic telepresence. So it really is. It's not teleporting like in Star Trek, but it's the next best thing. You can shoot somebody and have them be a 3D image, either projected or online, projected in a venue or online. And it's as if they are there. You can have a person sitting in a panel next to 3 other people that are physically at the panel. Right. And it's not quite seamless, but it's very close. Yes. And from a communication standpoint, it's very close. So I think that's something that's very exciting. I like to be kind of at least knowledgeable, and sometimes when, often I learn things. In this case, I learned something because a client was asking for it. Sure. So, now I'm the holographic telepresence guy. Now everything I look at,
sounds good.
Most projects I look at, I either want to think from a marketing standpoint, it should be content marketing, it should be a course, or it should be a holographic telepresence.
John, and say a little bit about the R&B group. You've been coming for a while. Like everybody, when I speak to them in the beginning, they're a little cagey, like another group, another bit. And I actually, just for those who are out there on LinkedIn networking, rather than just clicking a button and saying happy birthday or happy anniversary, I made a couple comments to you. And that really opened up our dialogue. So why don't you tell us why you're a very, very busy guy. You travel, you're doing all these different things, but you've always seemed to take time to come to our events and actually bring superior talent. So I'll leave it to you. Why don't you tell us a couple things about why you come, why you attend, and why you support us?
Well, thanks, Jay. I have really enjoyed, I'm part of a couple networking groups around the country. a couple organizations, a couple things, but I haven't had any value add as much as I have from your group. It's been people literally, I mean, every person I've talked to in various industries go out of their way to make introductions and connections. Totally get it. I think the real standout is that, or the standout feature is that everybody understands the value of a good, strong referral. So I have people, especially in the online space, I've met some extremely meaningful connections through your group. I'd say probably half a dozen. And it's been less than much less than a year. It's just been several months, few months. But I'm working on a big project with Ed Katz right now. Stephen Samea, great guy. He's been making some introductions for me to some people in New York, and continues to do so. So I find it invaluable. I feel the differentiator from other networking groups, if that's what it's called, referral groups, referral organizations, is that just everybody gets it right off the bat. People are jumping ahead in front of each other to try to make introductions. And I find that extremely good. I mean, to be honest, it raises the bar a little bit. I'm like trying to think of, my God, who can I introduce some of these people to, or who can I bring to Jay's group? And I've tried to make some quality introductions
And you have.
And pay back to bring to the group. I like to further the mythology that I know everybody, but I met my match. I think Jay Rovert knows everybody.
Well, John, just getting to know you, and I'm sure our wonderful producer, Larry Wilner, will agree and second it and third it. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. We're really just coming to our events. You have such good karma about who you are and such modesty to the third power. So, and I know this was an extremely busy morning for you. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. And thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you on the 27th.
Very good. Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.